And we are live. Welcome, everybody. My name is Aleš, and you are here again for my Aleš Tunes Up workshop. But what's more important, with me is Rasmus Hougaard, who is my VIP guest of the day, or should I say of the night? It's we are in the same time zone, right? It's 8 p.m. now. And I'm very grateful that he joined because he is not only a CEO of Potential Project, and if it sounds good to you and there's some potential there, trust me, you should definitely look it up. And he is helping leaders to deploy and develop more human or humane way of leadership and treating people. We're going to talk about that very much, and I have some questions set up, but I'll shut up for a bit, Rasmus, because maybe I missed something. Maybe there's something that you want to add before we go right to the question. I want to give everybody as much from your brilliant mind as we can within the time we have.
Most important, I have 2 wonderful cats and 3 kids, live on a houseboat in Copenhagen and generally enjoying life. And Alice, thank you so much for inviting today and for our engagements through the company you're also working for. Really a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining, Rasmus. And we're going to be talking about the key learnings from your latest book, which is called Compassionate Leadership. And you can buy it everywhere. So I got it on Amazon. And I also had a pleasure to listen to Rasmus delivering a presentation on one of our corporate events. And people loved it. So I'm sure you're going to love it too. In any case, let's go straight to it. And I'm going to start with the question related to what are our typical beliefs and how they are helping or not helping current leaders. So this is a hooky one. Rasmus, I know you do this a lot. So the question would be, what do you say, or what would you say is the greatest misconception among senior executives when it comes to leadership? What do they believe is true and it may not be?
Yeah, misconceptions, always a good, catchy question. We asked ourselves and around 350 executives the question, what did they find most hard in leadership? This is about 3 years ago when we started this big research study for the book that you just showed there. So we did it together with Harvard Business Review and Forbes and a number of other institutions. Then we interviewed all these people, and the thing that came up that people found the most difficult, and then I'll come to the misconception, is not to make strategic decisions. It's not to get to the right results. I'll give an example. One of the CEOs we talked to, Mads Nipper, as a CEO of Ørsted, which is the largest sustainable energy company in the world. He said, I can make billion-dollar decisions and sleep totally fine at night. But if I have a conflict with someone, or if I have a difficult conversation coming up, I can be sleepless on night on end. And so this idea of having to do hard things is what leaders find most difficult. And the misconception that most leaders have is that they think they have to choose either to be a nice guy that people like or to be a hard manager that gets stuff done. And that is an absolute misconception. And the misconception is that we think it's a dichotomy, but it's not. What our research found is that if you train and practice some of the things that we found in our research, you can actually bring those two together, and then you can learn to do hard things in a human way.
Okay, so you can have a cake and eat it too in a way, or is there a catch?
It depends if you're British and believe in that saying. I wouldn't say you can have the cake and eat it, but you can do difficult things, and you can do it in a way that people actually really appreciate you doing it.
Got it. All right, and I mean, you coined a very, very catchy concept of wise compassion, and I know you created a 2x2 matrix, and of course, that's how you create a bestseller. 2x2 matrix needs to be there, and I like yours, of course. Wise conception would be in the upper right corner. That's the good corner where everyone wants to be, right? But what does it actually mean? I know this is kind of the key to the successful blend of doing the hard things in human way, not having to deal with these trade-offs. Define it for us in your own words. I know you did in a book, but still.
Yeah. So it's very simple. Again, on this concept of doing hard things in a human way. That means leaders need to be able to, one, do hard things, which is what we call wisdom. That means having the clarity of what are the right business decisions, but also having the courage to actually push through and do some of the difficult things. And then on the other, so that's on the horizontal, and on the vertical, we have the care, the compassion, the kindness to the people you're with, which is basically having the intention to benefit people. And obviously, we would ideally, as leaders, be up in the second quadrant where we both have care and wisdom. In other words, wise compassion. That's where we do hard things in a human way. In the first quadrant, so up in the top left, we are in this situation of having a lot of care, but not wisdom and courage to actually do the difficult things. We're in caring avoidance. When someone on our team is underperforming, we don't give them the feedback because we don't want to hurt their feelings. And if we go down to where we have a lot of wisdom but not a lot of care, we are an uncaring execution. We get stuff done, we push people, we really, really, just get stuff done, but without care. And while that can be very effective in the short term, in the long term, people are going to leave because nobody wants to work for a leader that doesn't really care for them.
Got it. Got it. I'd like to touch on some of these, ineffective parts of the 2x2, and I'm gonna start with the one you actually finished right now. So the uncaring execution is something that caught my eye in there, because we live in times where, of course, the mobility of workforce is much greater than ever before, and some teams have a lot of turnover, talent movement, whatever is a nice word for it, and we even tend to embrace it in many companies as something that's actually benign. But I believe it gets us into the situation when you are essentially dealing with strangers or partially strangers, right? People come and go, and if you are getting things done, as you said, uncaringly, I wouldn't go as far as saying like being a backstabber, but this might bring you short-term benefits. You mentioned that. So
Yeah.
isn't this harder in the times we live in to actually go through the time and invest enough to get the long-term benefits of wise compassion?
Mm. It is true, wise compassion does take a little more time, but it is not so much that we should start to just spend a ton of time with our people and really talking to them and listening all the time. Of course, we should do a bit of that, but what our research found was there were four behaviors, and we can get to them a little bit later, that drives wise compassion. So it's not so much about the time you spend and thereby the long term, but it's just about having a different mindset to people and having some very specific behaviors that embodies both care and wisdom. And the reason why it is so important, even if it takes a little more time and certainly some time to get used to it, is that when you are an uncaring execution, people will leave. And I can give an example of one of the largest tech firms in the world, one that everybody knows very well and everybody's using every single day. They have shared with me that they have a 30% turnover annually. 30% for a knowledge worker company. That is just crazy, crazy, and super expensive because you spend so much time recruiting and trying to retain and replacing. Incredibly costly. So what is more long term? What is more short term? I would say it's definitely faster to treat people well, to have leaders that really care for people, or if they don't, that at least they learn the behaviors that make people feel taken care of. If you do that, long term, short term, better results.
I also, to support your case, I've read it in several sources, and you mentioned it in your book. There are also selfish reasons to do that, right? Because I think you discovered that long term, leaders who are caring are happier themselves, regardless what results they produce.
Yeah, they are happier. The people that work for them are happier. There's greater job performance. There's greater loyalty to the company. It's just on all aspects of performance and well-being for the leader and for the employee, you just score higher.
Got it. Maybe because data driven leaders in here might be thinking, okay, what does that mean, short term, long term? So would it mean for a people leader to kind of expect ROI after a month, after a year? How long do they have to wait to see the
Yeah,
benefits of wise compassion?
yeah. It depends on so many factors. Of course, the way you have behaved, let's say, for the past years, is ingrained in the people you're leading, and thereby it takes time for them to see you in a different light. So it's not something that happens overnight, but it is fairly bulletproof that when you actually start to embody these behaviors, that you get to a stronger sense of trust between yourself and the people you're leading, psychological safety, and thereby you slowly unleash greater performance, which then obviously leads to ROI results. But it's not a quick fix, it's not a silver bullet, it doesn't come overnight. But you will be happier in the process of doing it. Your people will be happier, and the results will also win in the short, mid, and long term.
Got
It's
it.
really hard to argue. I mean, we collected more than 1 million data points, and it is so conclusive. It's really hard to argue against.
Okay, what if it's so conclusive? Why don't we do that more? I mean, why do leaders still need you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I am so looking forward to the day where I can close down the company because there's no more need for this kind of leadership. But old ingrained corporates, cultures and behaviors, ways of doing things takes a long time to change. And corporations are traditional setup like military, even in both the org structures and the way we talk about it and so on, which is not by default a caring way, but rather a command and control, getting shit done. So there's a lot of, let's say, history of bad leadership, and that will take a few decades, I think, to change. Yeah.
Got it. I'm gonna pivot a little because I wanna ask a few things that maybe you're not being asked all that often. And one of the things that caught my eye in the book was your approach to the distinctions between intentions and the consequence. Of course, in business, we are mostly consequentialists, and we are trying to achieve, the shortest path to the
Mm,
results.
mm,
What about the effect on people? Suppose
mm,
I'm a caring leader, there is intent, but the outcome maybe is not as intended.
mm,
How many times can I have a good intent and not deliver
mm.
before it's going to impact, not only bottom line, but also the effect I have on people around me? So
Yeah.
how do you see this distinction?
Any leader that doesn't have the ability to drive consequence, to drive results, that doesn't have wisdom on how to do a good job to deliver good results for the company, with all love and respect for humanity, they shouldn't be in that role because that's what they're paid for. Leaders drive results, period. If you can't do that, you should do something else. Having said that, if leaders are too focused on intent and not on consequence, basically a lot of care, but not so much results, you're actually doing a disservice to the people that you're leading. And this is one thing that I have started to realize over the past few years since the book came out. It is probably more toxic to be in the first quadrant where you have a lot of care, but not the wisdom to manage people cleverly. That is more toxic than when you are down in uncaring execution, where you are, driving people but without care. Because down there, people know that you don't care, and they just put up a shield and they get stuff done. So it's bad, but it is probably not as bad as when you care a lot but don't drive for results. And the reason for that is in that caring avoidance quadrant where you care a lot but you're not having the wisdom and the courage to do stuff, you're creating very psychologically unsafe environments, which is really toxic for people. And the reason why is if someone on your team is underperforming and you're telling that person, one, the person will know. And because you're not telling, the person will not know where you stand and where they stand. also other people on the team will be deeply discouraged by it. So not having wisdom driving results can be really bad. So it's not about either or, you need to have both.
Got it.
And I'll
So
just say the research that we did was, I should have said that up front, like with these more than 1 million data points and so on. We have this beautiful graph, I believe is page 2 in the book, which basically shows that on all levels, when you manage to combine care and wisdom, when you bring them together, results are on average 2.4 the effect of if you're good at one or the other.
got it. Would you say that one of them is preconception of the other? So the wisdom you mentioned or technical prowess, understanding, being able to deliver results is a needed precondition to be a caring leader, or can I acquire the wisdom through the care, or are those completely independent variables?
I think they're very independent, and most leaders have an orientation to one or the other. Very few in the beginning of their career managed to actually bring them together. And what we saw was that the higher you get in rank, actually, the better you are in bringing those together. The more senior people are, generally, not always, but generally, the more caring they actually are. However, they will not be seen that way. The more senior you are, the more you'll be seen as uncaring, not less wise and great at driving results, but less caring. And that is because there is a big difference between, or the more senior you are, the more difficult decisions you need to make. And that is what you'll be known for. And therefore, you'll be seen as uncaring. But in general, the more senior, the more caring.
Got it. That's interesting. I definitely want to go there and a little bit deeper. Um, I wonder within this fiction, where would you place what is sometimes lovingly called the brilliant jerks? This genius personas, Steve Jobs, who started a company, delivered results, but people around them did not. I would
Yeah.
say enjoy their leadership. Might be an understatement.
Yeah. Yeah. There is a lot of good research that shows being a jerk can also drive results. That's just a fact. We have good data showing the opposite. That is also a fact. So in essence, both can work. It's just a matter of who is it that you want to be and what kind of impact is it you want to have on people. Having said that, just to take one of the greatest examples of today, Elon Musk, who is known to really drive great results. And personally, I drive a Tesla, and it's like the safest car on the planet. It's the most pleasant thing to ride. I mean, it is impressive, and it's even profitable. That is very impressive, but we know that people in Tesla are suffering. And I think the more stark example was obviously when he took over Twitter, and the first thing was how he laid off people, how that was executed was deeply, deeply, deeply uncaring and probably quite traumatizing for a lot of people that have been very loyal to Twitter for many years. If you take and contrast that, and by the way, now Twitter, like nobody wants to work for Twitter, not that there are any jobs because everybody's being fired, but nobody wants to work there, clearly. If you take and contrast that to Airbnb, when we went into COVID and Airbnb was like in real difficulties because there was no business anymore. And the CEO, he wrote this really personal letter to all employees, including those that were laid off, and said, we have to lay off people, and all of those that you're impacted, just know this is not about you. Like there was just so much care, and like that whole letter, which you can find on the internet, and we link to it in the book, just incredible care while still doing the really difficult thing of laying people off. And Elon could do the same. Like you can easily be caring in how you lay people off. You don't need to be a jerk. You don't need to be cruel to people when you lay people off. It doesn't help you. It doesn't give you a good reputation. And nobody that is left behind is going to appreciate it. It just ruins morale. So why not care? One of my big heroes, Dalai Lama, he always says, be kind whenever possible. It is always possible. Like I heard that Churchill once said, sometimes you have to kill a person, but at least you can say, I'm sorry, which is a grave example, but in the context of World War II, that makes sense. You can always be kind, always be kind.
Got it. I'm now curious a little bit. So I totally see how the uncaring approach may ruin a company as a desirable employer. Through Glassdoor, other reviews. I also had a few guests in the past on this podcast when we were talking about brand advocacy and how important it is to have employees who are actually rooting for you as an employer.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, would you say that it's what would you say is the root cause for, let's say, brilliant gel surviving in the industry? Is it the markets
Hmm.
wanting to see that okay, people will
Hmm.
lay off thousands without
Hmm.
hesitation?
Hmm.
Is it
Hmm.
personality of those people?
Hmm.
Is it
Hmm.
something that you can see from the data? Is it choice? Combination of all?
I don't have any data on that. I
Hmm.
could guess on a lot of things and have anecdotal evidence. Of course, a brilliant jerk can be super charismatic. Who doesn't want to work for that? Another thing is if they have results like they do with Tesla, like obviously people are drawn to success. So it's cool to work for Tesla. You get good salaries because things are going well. Like there's a lot of different reasons why people would do that. But as the owner of a company like that, you can still choose to treat people nice. And I'm not saying you shouldn't lay people off because we have to lay people off. I laid people off myself. Last year, I had to lay off a whole division of our company because we chose that's not our strategy anymore. A few years ago in COVID, financially was challenging. We had to lay people off. And I do that without any hesitation because I know that is the right thing for the bigger purpose of what we're trying to do. But I damn well spend a lot of time on it, make sure it's orchestrated in the best way that each single individual is taken care of as much as ever possible. First of all, psychologically and emotionally. And then, secondly, of course, financially and getting on to the next job and so on. There is no reason not to do that in a good way. And you have to do it. So just do it in a good way.
Got it. So you mentioned not mention actually. The book is all about doing hard things. So what would be the typical hard things that the leaders would be avoiding? I know you speak about
Hmm.
avoidance in there. So
Hmm.
laying people off, obvious, right?
Hmm.
Providing negative feedback. We already spoke about it.
Yeah.
Is there anything else on the short list?
Yeah, I mean, if we take it from the most difficult, it's definitely laying people off. But sometimes the knife is on the throat. You have to let people go because of financial reasons. But there's letting people go. There's restructuring. There's giving people tasks that they don't want to do.
Hmm.
Then there's giving feedback. But then the more important that I think is a really important one is what I call growth conversations. If you are on my team and I see that you are not living up to your potential, I can see you can actually do more than you are now. Not by working more hours, that's not what I'm talking about, but I can see you have some seeds in you that needs a very firm and strong push. I will push you into situations that you do not appreciate. I'll tell you, like one new person that we hired very recently, just even a few weeks ago, I've made sure that she's put on a ton of very challenging client work because I know she's going to grow from that. And right now she's struggling and she's trying to swim in the deep water. And I know in 3 weeks she's going to come out and she's going to feel like rock solid. That's a growth conversation or growth actions to really help people grow, but then supporting them in that. So growth conversations, feedback, restructuring, giving crappy work, and then of course laying off. Those are like 5 really important ones. And none of them should ever be avoided.
Got it. Got it. So I'm actually there's tons of other things that I would be interested in terms of level of detail, but I really want to talk a little bit about the mid-level or maybe more junior managers,
Hmm.
the people who are kind of stuck in the middle. And
Yeah.
in large corporations, of course, this might be C-level executives. In smaller companies, it might be a different level of leadership. But someone who believes that their circle of influence is not large enough to move the needle when it comes to the company culture, when it comes to their immediate surrounding, I think they probably would fall into this one of these undesirable parts of the metrics, right? Protecting my team against those people above, or execute. What should these people do? Do they have it harder? Do they have it actually easier than the people on the top? Does the change need to come from the top? And there you go, Rasmus. There's asking a million questions wrapped into one. So deal with it.
First of all, it's wonderful if change comes from the top, but reality is often it doesn't. Does that mean you shouldn't do what you think is right? No. Also, if we're waiting for others to create the change that we're hoping to see, I think there's a risk we'll wait forever. So why not just be the change that we want to see? Paraphrasing Gandhi here. So there's no excuse to not be what you want to be in the world in terms of what you want to bring to the people you're leading. And if you're in a culture that's too toxic and doesn't receive it well, then you should find somewhere else to work. And just that's as simple as I think it is. Your life is too short and too precious to be in a culture that doesn't support what you think is right, which is basically normal, foundational human values of treating each other well.
Got it. So what is the telltale sign that maybe you are trying to boil the ocean as an employee?
I would say if you are managing the balance of both doing hard things but in a human way, and you see that that is not appreciated where you are, if they want you just to be hard, then you're too good for them. You're too good for that company. You should go somewhere else.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. So let's
just the advice for mid-level or junior leaders. Just the one thing generally that I would advise, based on this research where we interviewed all these executives, and one question that we always asked was, what would you wish you could have taught your younger self? In other words, what would you wish you had learned or been better at early in your career? And 9 out of 10 of these excellent executives said along the lines of, I wish I had been better at doing the hard things at an earlier age. Because all of us as humans, we are born altruistic. We want to do good to others. But then when we get into a management position, we have to do difficult things to others. All those things we talked about before. And that sucks because it goes against our nature. And therefore, it's really hard for a mid-level leader or mid-manager to do those things. And therefore, we refrain from doing it. And the learnings from all of these senior executives: don't wait, put the gloves on and get into the fight. Learn to do the difficult things, but do it with care. And I can say personally, having been always my entire life like a very conflict averse person, like I didn't like conflict, I didn't like to give feedback because I was afraid what people would think. Would they like me? Would they leave? Having gone through this research, interviewed all these people, like it's been the most amazing journey of setting myself free to share my honest opinion and help people to grow. And it's such a wonderful journey when you start to take the courage to have the real conversations, not just once a year or once a month, but every single day. You feel free, people feel trust and safety, and it's just wonderful.
Sounds almost too good to be true. I feel fired up now. But in any case, I know Rasmus that you have a lot of commitments. So I'm gonna start winding us down. So all of this stuff that we've been discussing mostly comes from your recent book, and I'm gonna bring it on screen. And by that I mean I'm gonna show you that I actually have it. And it's the book Compassionate Leadership: Doing Hard Things in a Human Way. And I want to know if there's another way that people can get in touch with your stuff, learn about what you do, except getting the book, which I highly recommend. Where should they go?
Yeah, I'd say go to our website and go on the research and resources, because there we are posting the essence of all the research we do, which is very rich, but we do it as one pager, simple infographics. So all of the complex data and research we do with Columbia and with Harvard and others, we really condense that. So if you want to learn about leadership in a very simple way and you want to avoid reading the whole book, just go to our website and look at that. It's super helpful. And then, of course, if you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll be updated on all the new research, these infographics and stuff like that.
Sure thing, and they will get some cat pictures every now and then, right?
I definitely can. Well, yes, sometimes.
Okay, so for those of you who are going to be just listening to this, the website that Rasmus was mentioning is potentialproject.com. You will find all the good stuff in there, or LinkedIn, as we said. So Rasmus, thank you very much for being with me today. I wish you a lot of energy to have for your next call and the next call, and even more for boiling the ocean of corporate leadership.
Thanks so much, Alex. Really appreciate it. And thank you for today. And listeners, hope you enjoyed. Hope it was helpful.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Have a lovely rest of the day, and we'll see you on LinkedIn or wherever